Ray Hess. Here. Kelly Malott.
Here.
Victoria Newport. Here. Rick Smith.
Here.
Howard Solomon.
Here.
Okay. I'm going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to click those that middle school wrestling team is going to lead us tonight. All right. Good.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have on the public hearing, application for waiver of school code regarding driver education fees. The board will hold a public hearing for the purpose of considering whether to submit a waiver of school code section 5-27-23 from the Illinois State Board of Education to allow the district to charge a reasonable fee not to exceed $400 for students participating in driver's education behind the wheel training. And I'm going to open the hearing. If there are any questions or questions to be asked regarding the hearing? Nothing? All right. If there are no questions, I'll ask to close the hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All right. Vote. Okay. Next we have
You don't have to go on.
approval of application for waiver of school code for driver's education fees. That the Board of Education approve the request of a waiver from the Illinois General Assembly to charge a fee not to exceed $400 beginning the second semester of the 2015-2016 school year through the 2020-2021 school year for students who participate in driver's education. If a student is unable to pay for such a course, the fee will be waived. Have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, Vicky?
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Vicky Hernan favor.
Yes.
Mary Hess. Yes. Kelly Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Okay. Application for waiver of state board rules. That the Board of Education approve an application for the waiver of ISBE rules allowing DeKalb Custodial District 428 to raise the amount the district charges from $50 per student to $250 per student as a temporary fee for driver's education for the first semester of the 2015-2016 school year after holding a public hearing to take testimony from parents and educators. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, Vicky?
Vicky Hernan favor.
Yes.
Mary Hess. Yes. Kelly Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Project Black Bear Abatement Agreement. That the Board of Education approve the attached resolution for tax abatement for Project Black Bear at Park 88 to promote commercial development within DeKalb County. And this is an action item. Andrew?
And actually, I'm going to defer to Gino Galuzzo is here from Hinshaw.
Should I please stand over here?
That's fine.
Okay. I'm with Hinshaw. I'm Tony Caprelli's partner, and I'm here today to talk about this abatement request that came through. Just to give a little bit of history for those of you that are new to the board, the school district was approached, I'd say later part of last year by the DeKalb Economic Development Board and City through Paul Board. And at that time, the city had an existing abatement agreement. What an abatement agreement is when a developer wants to build a new building or they want to attract a new business to the area. It's a way to offer an incentive to somebody. So what it is in effect is you're abating their real estate tax portion of their tax bill for a certain number of years. The school district would abate its tax, and other taxing districts would be asked to abate theirs also. So you could abate yours, and other taxing districts may not necessarily abate theirs. In this particular situation, what's being asked of you is in essence a 9-year abatement. It's a scaling abatement, so it's 90% in year 1, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, and 10. By law, given the size of this project, the maximum amount of the abatement caps out at $4 million. You probably read that in the resolution that's before you. Based on some estimates, these are rough estimates, that means even though the abatement might be for a 9-year period, they'll likely cap out after about 5.5 years, is in essence what that'll happen. Based on estimates that Mr. Bork has provided, rule of thumb indicating that if it's a 980,000 square foot facility at $1.30 tax, that's where they'll cap out. The $4 million cap is a maximum abatement which all taxing bodies can give to the business itself. And again, that depends on how many taxing bodies jump into the fray here with us on the abatement. Given the urgency of the matter, this matter just popped up in the last couple of weeks for us for this particular project, Black Bear. My understanding is they're going to ask the school district, the city, and the county for the abatement at this point in order to try to attract the developer and then possibly go back and ask some of the other taxing districts thereafter. Mr. Bork can speak on that if you'd like to recognize it later. But you'll notice there's quite a bit of terms in this abatement agreement. And again, just to bring you back a little bit for some history, before this particular project, we were asked to give an abatement, entering an agreement with the city and the county to go after, in essence, an enterprise zone where abatements would be granted. And the school district, being a good partner to the local community to attract development and business and increase the tax base, agreed to do so, but wanted to make sure there were certain terms there to protect the district with regard to criteria it would require before those abatements would be granted. So what we did in this resolution is we mirrored much of those terms that were negotiated back in the latter part of last year, passed in a resolution, I think it was in November or December of last year for the enterprise zone, and pulled a lot of those criteria the school district said they would find acceptable in those terms and brought them over to this agreement here, this resolution in essence. The only difference in this resolution from the others, and those terms are, given the speed at which they're moving, we're only requiring for our abatement that the city and the county also give an abatement as opposed to any of the other taxing bodies that are smaller percentage taxing bodies. The scale of the abatement, the percentage for each year has changed slightly because if you notice in the enterprise abatement, there were a couple years in there, year 3 and 4 and 5 were all 50%. And here, given the size of the potential user being over 900,000 square feet, the abatement scale is a little bit better for the developer from the standpoint of the slided scale. It has 70% in year 3 instead of 50, and 40% in year 4 instead of 60. Those are the only changes. But again, depending upon the number of taxing districts that go jump into the fray here with us on the abatement, the maximum amount of the award that would be granted to the user would be limited to $4 million, not less. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, or if you want to hear from the actual developer who's doing the project.
Is there any other questions?
Can I just add one thing, because I know we have 40 board members. Part of this agreement, so you should understand, is although we give the money back to the developer or the individual business, we do get the money back from general state aid. However, it takes about 2 years for itself to work into our formula, and it's not actually 100% of the money coming back to us that we're actually debating because of the proration of the state fee, lose the dollars in between. So I just wanted to make certain that, you know, although we're abating, there is an accommodation right now in the general state aid formula that actually returns that money back to the schools.
Minus the quarter.
Minus the
Which I think the bid recently was 92% or 89%.
Yeah, question about, you mentioned that in your first remark that this goes back a year or so ago and that was approached? Is that for this particular thing? I'm
No,
trying to understand the urgency.
It's just just the explanation there was to give a little bit of the history of how we got to the terms.
Okay.
So when you look at this, you'll notice there's a lot of terms in there.
Okay.
And what I was trying to do there is paint the picture that those terms were brought forward at the latter part of last year, mid to late part of last year, because they had approached this on an abatement agreement generally to cover a longer period of time. I think it was a 10-year period, in the event that they were able to be awarded an enterprise zone from the state. So we didn't have to, although we were asked to do this, in a matter of a week or a week and a half or what have you, we didn't have to come up with all these terms from scratch because we were able to pull them from the previous resolution that we prepared with regard to the enterprise zone at the latter part of last year.
And that enterprise zone becomes effective if the state grants it to us in 2016, is that right?
Only if the state grants it to you, and it started as a 2016 correct. And I don't know where they're at in their decision process. I would imagine they'll be related.
Howard?
As I understand this, the abatement is going to reduce and remove tax obligations from the developers who go into this project. Is that
Real estate tax,
real estate tax?
percentage of the project.
Okay, so at what point will we actually reach a point where we're taxing these people as if, at the same rate as we would tax other people?
At the full level, it'd be the sooner of they're being provided $9 million total by all taxing districts that enter into the abatement agreement, $4 million, that's on that correctly, or after 9 years of abatements. The scale currently is a 9-year abatement with 10% in the ninth year. So they'll begin paying 10% on year 1, 20% in year 2, and so on until they hit that 100% mark in year 10. So it'll be the sooner of. I don't have an exact time for you. It could be it could be 5.5 or 6 years. Could be 7, could be 8, could be worst case scenario.
Is there any indication that they plan to stay in that position and location beyond the 10th year so that we can actually see some tax?
Well, I can't speak to that. I'm sure they kind of what the intent's going to be on the lease or whether they're going to own the building. But I can tell you if they build the building, they're going to have a large investment. They're going to look for a recapture of those investment dollars probably over 10 years. And those Mr. Biddle that are actually to be recognized. And they'll be paying some tax dollars, as they go through that first scale, sliding scale.
My name is Mark Good. I'm the developer of Park 88 and happy to be the developer of Park 88. As you all know, it's been 3 years since we've had any activity in Park 88, a little over 3 years, no companies coming here. But just to give you perspective on this size building, over the 9 years, the total positive impact to the school district is $3.8 million. So though they're getting some abatement over time, during that 9-year period, $3.8 million is coming to the school district. Right now, on a per acre basis for the 50 acres they're using, we pay about $3,000 in taxes because it's agricultural. So the net positive impact would be somewhere in the range of $3.7 million or $3.8 million if we can do this. If we don't do this and they go somewhere else, we don't get a chance to get them back. They're gone. So, and this is a close to a 1 million square foot building, and you know that out in that business part target's 1.5 million, and a 200,000 square foot building is a pretty large building. We had to do 5 deals like that just to capture this one deal. The total positive impact to all taxing bodies in the community will be about $6 million over the 9-year period, as opposed to getting virtually nothing for farmland. So, although they are getting some benefits, I always like to look at it that, realistically, the communities are getting a significant amount of tax and it's growing each year significantly as they burn through their incentive program.
And if I just can add, as Andrew indicated earlier, based on the current state funding formula, we're going to recoup 89% of what we're abating based on the current state funding formula. The state will make that up based on how the state aid funds works.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Good. One of the concerns I have after looking at the updated fact sheet is the salary range and what sort of folks will be drawn to the district, multi-corporate and beyond. Your average wage is $14, your minimum is 11. And when I said you, I'm speaking to the company that we don't know who it is.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So with the wages that have been proposed in this fact sheet and 300 jobs, I would feel more comfortable with a situation like this if I knew a little bit more about the distribution of those jobs, what types of jobs are paying what sorts of wages, and some more specific detail, because I'm concerned ultimately about the district and what sorts of folks might get these jobs, whether they're in or out of DeKalb County, in or out of this district, and what their economic situation might be. We have about 58% of our students on the free and reduced lunch program right now, which gives us some kind of idea of their family economic situation. $14 an hour will not support the family. Both wage earners in the family, if there were both, if there were a mother and father, would have to both work at $14 an hour in order to earn enough money to be able to live and pay taxes and so on, as most families would in this community. So I'm concerned about the draw or lack of draw with any new business coming to DeKalb or this area, and whether or not it's viable in the long run. Certainly a $40 million property is better than a farm field, but I'm more concerned about downstream. Will we need to support whatever children come to the district if these people work and live here? And if they don't if they don't live in DeKalb, these workers, these 300 new jobs, and are elsewhere, then are we subsidizing folks from some other part of northern Illinois?
Yeah, that's a good question. When it's fully taxed, there'll be about $700,000 coming to the school district from this one building. So that supports a lot of education. And it's hard to get a 1 million square foot building. There aren't that many of them built in the Chicago area. Chicago is a pretty big district for industrial development. Industrial development spurs other jobs. Most studies that are done nationally by major consuls on job creation look to try to have a balanced taxing bodies between industrial, retail, residential, etc. Residential is difficult because it falls on a lot of services. Industrial has the least amount of service impact, fire and police and etc. But the studies show that for every job that's created in the industrial sector, there's 3 other jobs created in the community. Whether it's retail, because you have people eating and shopping and staying in the community. So it's typically a 3-to-1 ratio. So there's a positive benefit on employment just from that. But you know, when you do bring an industrial company in, the one thing that I can't do is dictate how they're going to pay people. They have to be competitive. You have very good employers here with 3M, Target, and others in the community. And if they want to, continue to hire in this community, they got to be competitive with the other industrial companies that are here. And I think that anybody coming here would be competitive with the other companies.
You mentioned the ratio of 3-to-1 jobs creation, industrial, but is logistics industrial?
Yes.
Compared to manufacturing?
Actually, today's warehouse is not the warehouse of your father or my father. These are highly computerized warehouses. They have significant training for their operators. A lot of them are very computerized with chips in the pallets that tell people where to go. I don't think I could operate, but the reality is that they highly train people to operate within these buildings. They're not the same.
But the average wage is the real indicator of the training and what it's for. And it's
I can't speak to that because I know that this is where the average wage is in this facility, but I don't know that it might not be higher.
If I could address that, the wages indicated in the fact sheet are the minimum wages required per the intergovernmental tax abatement agreements and per the enterprise zone applications. But this doesn't reflect what this company themselves intends to pay or what the market might be paying from it.
Right. We did not, the company did not give us the $14. The $14 is saying that, but what this is saying to the company is that you need to pay this average to get this benefit. They might pay $20. I don't know that because I don't know what they, I don't see their weight.
So if I may, the resolution passed in November had those numbers in it, the average requirement of 14 and the minimum of 11. That was what the board then decided they wanted to put in there for their wages
Right.
for the enterprise
Yeah.
requirement.
Right.
So that's where those numbers would come in.
It's not coming from the company.
Okay, that's good to know, but it's very good to know, but it would force us to make a vote based on something that we don't know. That is what this particular employer thinks they are going to be able to do. It's based on what the enterprise zone says they must do. They must do what we say.
Well, they know they have to, we have to say to the company what we expect of them. What we're saying is that we expect you to have a minimum salary range of $14 an hour on average for your employees. They might come in and pay higher than that, but they can't get any benefits that pay lower than that. So it's setting, the community is setting the expectations of them, not them setting the expectations of the community. And I respect that from all the tax advisors.
Do we have any other questions
I'd
on this?
like to clarify one point. The number of jobs in the resolution we had sent out on Friday was 300. We received a call back because the fact sheet that they had provided said approximate. And, you know, as lawyers, we don't like the word approximate, because I don't know what that means. Mr. Bork had contacted, I think it was today or this morning, and asked for that to be changed to a minimum of 250 jobs. We've all represented an updated resolution was uploaded to the site for all of you earlier today. I just want to make sure that the resolution on the floor is the one with 250 jobs, not 300.
Then do I have a motion to move forward with the vote on this item?
Yes.
Vicki, roll call, please.
Sorry, I didn't get who voted.
Vicki,
First and Rick, okay. Mary Hess,
yes.
Terry Malat,
No.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Vicky Hernan Faber.
Yes. All right. You guys are up next. Recognition of Clinton Rosette wrestling team. Clinton Rosette Middle School took fourth place overall at the IESA State Wrestling Tournament on March 14th. Our state qualifiers were Jalen Hobson, 135 pounds, Jonathan Bannister, 112 pounds, Austin Johnson, 105 pounds, Logan Roach, 126 pounds, and Christian Jimenez, 105 pounds. And these individuals placed at state. Walter Green took sixth place overall at 75 pounds. Damian Lopez finished second overall at 80 pounds. Fabian Lopez was first place at 100 pounds, and Jacob Lindemann first place at 95 pounds. So congratulations. Is there anything you'd like to say about this group?
It was a good group of kids to work with, well disciplined and stuff like that. They ended up winning 4 tournaments this year, and we won the sectional tournament and then placed 4th in the state. And as far as enrollment, we were 500 kids less than any other team that placed. So if you give us a couple more elementary schools, we'll get it. But yeah, it was a
Great
good
job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that.
help wrestling with these issues.
All right, moving along here, acceptance of gifts and donations. That the Board of Education accept with gratitude the donation of $200 to Lincoln Elementary from the family of former Lincoln principal Erwin Cox. Do you have a motion?
Second.
Vicki?
Kenny Malak,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Vicky, you're in favor?
Yes.
Mary Hess.
Yes. Okay, public comment, Vicki, do we have any?
I do not.
Okay. Board committee reports and correspondence. Vicki?
The insurance committee met last week and the renewal is expected to come out in September. There's a meeting scheduled now that establishes that the committee will meet, the board will meet, the committee will meet, and the board will meet, so we don't wind up in a compression chamber time kind of thing. The loss history on the policy was handed out, and there was a sheet handed out about different premium levels and different benefits that it was brief, but we'll need to look at and evaluate as September approaches.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
All right.
Wait.
No,
I have something. I went to, with my wife, the all-district art display at the Egyptian Theater. I think it was Thursday. Fantastic. The kids and the teachers, it's just amazing. I mean, when I first went in the door, there were a bunch of kindergarten and first grade artwork, and it was just really, really good. And I got to talk with some of our teachers and our coordinator, and I really learned something from that evening. So it was a great time. You all missed it if you didn't go there, so next time. But fantastic, great job.
All right, and I just want to share with everybody also, we've assigned the board members to committees, district committees, and also to schools. So I'm going to read the list here, but Vicki will also be sending it out to everyone to have also. So let's go through this. The FFAC, myself and Rick are on that committee. Curriculum Council is Vicki and Carrie. Insurance is Vicki and Mary. Howard's on Multicultural Committee. Safety and Security is Carrie and Fred. Technology Committee will be Mary. Athletic Activities Review Committee will be myself and Rick. And then schools, I have DHS and Huntley Middle School. Vicki has DHS. Mary has Founders and Lincoln. Rick has Portland and Jefferson. Carrie has Brooks and Malta. Fred has Clinton, Rosette, and Littlejohn, and Howard has Tyler. So if in the next few weeks, if the board members and the principals could make contact, that would be great, and start working together. Any comments on that?
I just want to say, Vicki will get something out for all our administrators, so we'll have good contacts.
Anything else on it?
Tech committee met last week, and, they're doing a great job of pacing it out, of preparing the teachers and getting the devices ready and everything, and so, sounds like operations are well underway.
All right, next we have the state seal of vibrancy. Amy?
Say that 3 times.
Because you're choking on too much.
Right. Hey everyone, I'm Amy Crook. I'm the bilingual programs coordinator for the school district. And I just have an informational item for you tonight. And I have a copy of what the seal looks like for our students to give you. The state of Illinois passed last year and implemented this year the state seal of biliteracy. And what that means for our students is that students who can prove that they are fluent in a language other than English can take a test and get the seal of biliteracy put on their transcripts. So, for example, we have up to 20 students this year who will be taking it's the actual test, American Council for Teachers of Foreign Language. There's a nationwide test that they'll take to prove that they're literate in Spanish. It's offered in any language known to man. If you can't take a test in it, you can do a portfolio. This goes on their transcripts. They also have to either pass last year's PSAE in reading or this year's PARC reading, and if they don't pass that, then you can take the actual English test. So it goes on their transcripts. It means they can come to any employer and show that they are bilingual and biliterate. So it is of economic interest to our students. They can get a great job showing this. If they choose to go to university, NIU is offering up to 12 credits for free. That's a cost savings of up to $5,000 for our students. It also means that they are one class away from getting a minor in that language. It's like a whole semester. It's an amazing opportunity for our students. So of the kids that are taking the test this year, a lot of them are in the AT Spanish class. It's not just for English learners. I've spoken with other districts who thought that it was just for English learners. It's for all of our students in all languages. So it's an incredible opportunity this year that we're implementing. We're hoping to test next week. I have 2 kids who already passed their AP test last year and they're good to go. They'll have the seal on their diploma as well. And I think Tammy is ordering special cords for them to wear at graduation that will set them apart as bilingual and biliterate students.
I was just curious, under summary and recommendations, it says that you'll return the fall to discuss fees to be charged to students. What that's about.
Oh, so in order to take the test, it costs $20.
Oh, okay.
So I know we can't pass fees for this coming year, like our time period is up. So we're looking at asking for them upfront for the $20 fee.
Okay.
And then students who can't pay the $20, of course, have access to the student assistance fund for that.
Okay.
It's actually pretty cheap, you know, $20 for a test and then $5,000. Yeah.
And no one's taking in French?
I have one student who might, I'm waiting to hear back from Mrs. Zimmerman. I think that student is taking the AP French test, so won't need to go through me for it.
Okay.
You mentioned any language, so who administers the test in any language?
Well, I'm a bilingual coordinator. No, so the test
I'd like
is
to
on.
see what your seal looks like.
I know, right? No, so the tests are online. It's through the actual company, they're online. The one test that I can't figure out yet is the Polish test, and I'm glad that student's not taking it for another 2 years. I know who the student is, but it's like a €200 test. So we're hoping to find out if there's a different way the student can take the test, like through a portfolio, which would be free. And then I just have to find a fluent Polish person to grade it.
So you're comfortable with what you need to do, whatever the language is?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and the state has a whole page of approved assessments that we can take. Yeah.
Thank you. Curriculum Council Instructional Materials for Early Learning and Development Center. Ms. Lucy Gorshall, Ms. Katie Davis, and this is also a informational item.
Any questions? This is for, to bring parity to our pre-K through 12th graders in their curricular materials. We do not have a dedicated set of materials for our pre-K students at the Early Learning and Development Center. So they're working on a hodgepodge of materials that are put together. This would provide for that scope and sequence and early literacy skills for, we're addressing them, but this would give us the full capability with great materials. Questions?
Questions?
Is that?
Yes, I was reviewing it earlier and I wondered, at the pre-K level, are we mandated to align with Common Core?
Yes,
We are. If we teach pre-K, which is not a mandated program, right?
Correct.
But if we do teach it, we have to align with
Yes.
Common Core. Okay,
That's correct.
thanks.
And there's not a board member assigned to ELDC, so just FYI. That's fine, as long as I have the floor.
All
Like to bring that back. You have consensus to bring this back? Okay, next we have Link Through Freshman Transition Program, Ms. Tamara Roberter, and Chris Judkins and Al Gonzalez.
You know what, I was hoping they would join us tonight, but we have a lot going on at the school. We have an our athletic night and stuff. So I am here to present it. This is an informational item only, based on the need that we identified through freshman data, looking at attendance, discipline, grades. It was determined that we do need a freshman transition program at DeKalb High School. We do have a first-year dean that was involved with a Link Crew freshman transition program, which I am well aware of because of the school I came from. That was a Link Crew school. Link Crew is a freshman transition program where they train, there's national training, which usually takes place in California, but fortunately it was in Itasca this year. So we went and had Chris Judkins and Al Gonzalez were trained in the Link Crew. It's called the Boomerang Project. And what it is it's a year-long transition program, and it entails the freshman orientation. We work with our upperclassmen, juniors and seniors that apply to be Link Crew leaders. And we had 130 kids apply. They're recommended by teachers. Actually, there were more than 130 that applied. There were over 200, but 130 that made it. They were trained, we called it May Day. So they were just started the training with the sponsors. So those Link Crew leaders will connect to, every one Link Crew leader will connect to 10 to 14 freshmen. So they do a freshman transition, freshman orientation, which is it's exciting. It's very high energy. The freshmen come in. It's not where freshmen come in and sit and get information anymore. It's where they get connected through their upperclassmen. And they show them around the school. They do team building. They go in classrooms. 2 Link Crew leaders and their groups, and they do some team building. And then along with that, the year-long program includes the academic follow-up, and the Link Crew leaders support the freshman academic success and character building. They also do social follow-ups. They may sit and have lunch with them, get them acquainted to school activities and athletics to get them signed up, and then leader-initiated contacts through the Link Crew leaders. So it's a wonderful program, and I just wanted to make you aware of it. Do you have any questions?
It sounds like a great plan. When are you going to start?
It will officially start on the 21st of August, which will be our freshman orientation. It happens to be a Friday, and we're having our scrimmage football game that night. So the Link Crew leaders are going to encourage the freshmen to go to the scrimmage that night. So that's where the kickoff is. The Link Crew leaders will be working with, the sponsors will be working with the leaders over the summer to prepare them for that freshman orientation. Yeah. You're welcome. It's a new.
Do you know with this, the leaders, would they be able to treat this as like service time as far as college?
Yes, Link Crew is a recognized national program, so it definitely is a leadership program. In fact, at our middle school, we have what's called WEB. WEB and Link are related. The WEB stands for
Where everyone belongs.
Where Everyone Belongs. So that's been in the middle schools for a while. So this is just, it's an extension and a kind of a larger version of the WEB, and it's the Link Crew. So it's nice that it's through the middle school and then into the high school.
Yeah, is there any relation or connection to, is it the freshman academy? What's it called?
Experience.
Freshman experience.
Freshman experience? Yeah, so I see
Well,
an academic component to this. So.
Well, it's interesting because the 2 Link Crew leaders are actually freshman teachers, and they're very active freshman leaders with the freshmen. So it's not really related to the freshman experience, but the freshman experience, when we have flex, our freshman teachers have their flex area where they meet with their freshmen during flex. So we can utilize that flex time with our Link Crew leaders. So it's not related, however, they will definitely.
It's an overlap.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I invite you to come to the orientation, and I'll remind you on August 21st, because they do, what is that called when the kids run through? Gauntlet, thank you. They do a gauntlet, a human gauntlet, and the kids just run through it. I'm going to try to motivate teachers to be there because in my experience, the teachers, especially the freshman teachers, are just lined up. The Link Crew leaders are lined up. There's a gauntlet, the kids run through, it's high energy, excitement. So I would love to see you there. It'll be in the morning on August 21st, and I'll send you more information as we get closer. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, special education audit recommendations. It's Christy Meyer. And this is an informational.
Good evening. I'm coming before you this evening to share with you the audit that you had asked for actually a year and a half ago. The school board had the wherewithal, which I'm thankful for, to ask 4 questions of a external group of people that are called the cooperative. Okay, they're the Urban Special Education Leadership Cooperative, and they represent 100 districts and their experience of over 20 years. And they came in and they did an audit of our special ed services, but we got a bonus here, okay? It did cost money for you to do this, but it was well worth the money, in my opinion. We have a bonus here because it's not just of special ed. It is of all of our educational services and the way that we do business here. So I'd like to share with you the recommendations, the 10 recommendations that they came away with. They interviewed 85 different stakeholders here in District 428, from parents to the superintendent. Everyone from teachers and instructional assistants throughout, administrators, to get a sense of what is District 428 all about in providing their educational services to students in need, but also all of our students. You asked 4 questions. Those questions were, is the special education identification process efficient and non-biased? Is the school district effectively serving students in the least restrictive environment? How does the school district accelerate the educational outcomes for students with disabilities? And is the school district optimizing the use of its resources? And again, I think that this was money very well spent. The information that we get from this audit is really springboarding us into setting some goals for the next, in my opinion, 10 years. Because we can set some immediate goals, but then we have, I see a 3, a 5, and a 10-year plan. And we'll come back to you. I need to meet with the stakeholders and put together that plan for you and a timeline and how we're going to reach those goals. But tonight, I just want to share with you the basics of the recommendations from this audit, okay? So, thanks, Lisa. Okay, the first recommendation is actually something that we're very well prepared for. We've had what's called, we've called it the 3TM model, or we've had a group that has gotten together on a regular basis in the past, and we need to reinstate that. That is one of their recommendations, that we reinstate our multi-tiered system of support committee. This is a district-wide committee that takes a look at how we do business in both the academic and the behavioral domains, okay? You've heard us talk about, perhaps you remember us talking about Tier 1 is where we're serving, this is the curriculum that we're giving to all of our students. Tier 2 would be an intervention to boost students to the Tier 1. Tier 3 would be those that have more intensive needs, and we need to give more intensive services to those needs, okay? And so we're looking at that. Recommendation 2 is that to improve those systems to determine which students are eligible for special education. You're going to see that these recommendations really do intertwine. The first one helps us determine who's not meeting Tier 1 expectations and goes to Tier 2 and then to Tier 3. We need to follow a system, and one of these recommendations says, then communicate that system with all stakeholders. Thank you, Lisa. We need to expand our inclusive education opportunities, and in particular, this audit specifies in our early childhood students. Right now, we have, if you go to the ELDC, we have EC classrooms, early childhood classrooms, and we have pre-K, pre-kindergarten classrooms. early childhood students, it's a self-contained classroom with students who have individual education plans, or they have special education needs. Separated from those that are in the pre-kindergarten classrooms that do not have individual education plans. What the recommendation is that we have a more inclusive environment that really does mirror what we're doing from K-12, actually K-12, okay? So that was one of the recommendations, and that again will be on our goal setting. Recommendation 4, we need to work together to teach all students within their least restrictive environment, providing that supported differentiated instruction for all students. And again, this is what we do here at District 428. We have the pieces, we just need to collaborate together. I'm looking forward to working very closely with Dr. Huber and her C&I department. This relationship between the special ed department, the C&I department is crucial for us to make sure that we're meeting and teaching all of our students inclusively. Okay, recommendation 5 is that we need to build capacity within our district right now to educate those students who have been traditionally outplaced. One data piece that comes out of this audit is that we are high in a number of students that we outplace from District 428. Now, I'm going to speak that we are doing our very best to serve our students here in District 428. But right now, we don't have the capacity. Some of it might be in space. Some of it might be in support systems that we put into that space. But we need to take a look at what our systems are, our support systems are, so that we can, 1, keep our students in District 428, and 2, provide an inclusive environment that we can welcome back some of those students who have been outplaced. We need to build our capacity to deal with the social emotional needs of our students. And that's through PBIS, or the Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. And fortunately, again, we have from pre-K all the way through 12th grade, we are using PBIS, okay? But what we need to take a close look at is that for the most part, a good percentage, and I can't draw the percentage right off, but the good percentage of our students that are being outplaced are due to that an emotional need, okay? And so we need to be able to be preventative rather than reactionary. So we need to put those systems in place, catch them early, support them, so that they don't feel as though they need to, students need to find other external ways to express those internal emotional needs. So we need to work on those systems throughout. Recommendation 7 is establish a special education parent advisory group. And that's something that we've been talking about in our district improvement teams. We're always talking about how can we be more inclusive and include the voice of the parent. Thank you. Recommendation 8, establish and support shared accountability for special education. Anyone who knows me knows that this is so close to my heart. We need to work together. We need to be a team with those shared goals. And not only here in District 428, but when we look at our outside agencies, they have the same shared goals that we have. So let's utilize our community agencies as well as look within and work together, as I said, to make sure that we can put these goals as part of our district goals. And then optimize our resources. They gave some great suggestions about the organization of our student services to best optimize our personnel. They also suggested doing some needs assessment, which we have already conducted this spring. So that was that low-hanging fruit that we needed to go ahead and do right away. And we got some great feedback from our teachers and our instructional assistants about the professional development that they would like to see so that they can do their job serving students the best that they can. And we need to take a look at the allocation of services throughout our district. Again, to provide those services so that teachers and students are feeling supported. And we're not looking outside of our district to serve our students. And lastly, we need an internal project manager. And honestly, it's on my job description, guys. This is what I do. Dr. Muller's like, what? Wait, who's this? What? A new position? No, how much is that gonna cost? You got it, it's me. Barb, you're gonna be taking care of business there. That's a double. So I would like the permission to come back to you. I'm thinking a couple times throughout the year to report out on how we're doing with these goals and share out on this mission.
That'd be great. Is that okay with everybody? Thank you, Kristen.
No problem.
Non-business consent agenda. That the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through E. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? Roll call, Vicki?
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Vicki Hernandez Davis,
Yes.
Mary Hess. Yes. Terry Malat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes. And with that, we approved a new principal and an assistant
Yes, we've
principal.
got it actually in
Turn it over to Doug.
assessment coordinator. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tom Kim. He's not a new face to the district. Tom has been DeKalb High School for just this 1 year. He has a strong instructional leadership background, and we felt his skill set was best served by moving him to Huntley Middle School's principal. So I really look forward to seeing Tom move into that role, and we're going to take care of the AD position, everyone, because that's the last thing was asked for me. So Tom, if you want to say a few words.
I just want to say thank you, and I'm really excited. Dr. Moeller introduced me to some folks earlier in the month, and looking forward to working with everybody and really, continuing the great work that the team there already in place has moved forward on this year. So very excited. Great notes already from staff over there. Great. I'm just really excited. They've sent some great encouraging words. So thank you.
And Dr. Zuber has something to do?
Yes, I'd like to introduce Amy Luckner. And Amy is coming to us she's currently in the District 303 working as a school psychologist. She earned her master's and PhD from the University of Minnesota. Amy is a little bit familiar with the DeKalb School District because she filled in for one of our school sites that was on maternity leave last year. She comes highly recommended from a couple of people in district that I respect greatly, and so I welcome you to DeKalb School District. Thank you.
I'm so excited to be taking on this position, and I especially really looking forward to the opportunity to really support a lot of these goals, both through kind of the curriculum and instruction perspective as well as through the special education perspective. I really do see the integration of that as being something that we can all work together towards. So I'm very excited to be joining the district. I've had great experiences here and also have heard great things too. So I hope that I can use my skills to contribute to the advancement of the goals that we have. Thank you.
And Kristen Smith has a new administrator.
Yeah. I'm also excited, like everybody else, to introduce Founder's new assistant principal. This is Robin Timmerman. She comes to us from Yorkville School District, and she was a school social worker. So she has a great background in working with some of the social emotional needs that I know will be a great support to be at Founders and our students. So really excited to have her on.
I'm also excited to meet everybody, and I had the opportunity last week to go and meet a lot of staff members at Founders and to be able to kind of look at the building. I'm really excited to hear all of your goals because they align a lot with things that I've been working on over the years, and I hope that I can participate in some of the committees at a district level to also bring in some of my experience with that as well. So thank you guys.
Welcome and congratulations. Business and finance, monthly financial reports, quarterly treasurer's report, and budget status update for fiscal year 2015. This is informational. Andrea.
Good evening. And this is just to help you navigate through all the financial information that you see in your board package periodically, sometimes monthly, as we stated, there's a quarterly treasurer's report. And then we are forever, it seems like, working on budget. We start the process in January and then you finish the process in September. So this is just to get you acquainted with some of the information. And so to start with, what you will see each month in your board packet is a statement of fund balances, which is broken down as such in front of you. So you see each and every fund that the school district has. You'll see what our beginning balances are, year-to-date revenues and expenditures, and then an ending fund balance. The next report you will see is the balance sheet with all funds, so that's all of our cash, investments, liabilities. And then the next report you will see is a statement of revenues, and then there's a statement of expenditures as well. But on the revenue side, what you will see is each fund is listed, and our revenue is split down by our local, state, and federal receipts. So you'll see that for each and every fund, you'll see month-to-date and year-to-date activity with the percentage of how much we are used up in our budget, and then you'll see for that same period of time where we stood last year. So that last column gives you a bit of a comparative. Then on the expenditure side, you will see each and every fund, and that's broken down by object, which is, so for each and every fund, you'll see salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, capital, and other, where applicable to each and every one of those funds. Again, you see month-to-date, year-to-date activity, and then you'll see balances, and again, a prior year snapshot of that same point in time. So very simple, that's something that you'll see. And then the next report are quarterly reports, and this is a treasurer's report. This one is quite lengthy, so I'm not going to read all of it, but I'll tell you by fund, and then if you just apply that to every fund that we have. So the first slide will show you operating funds, and we take a snapshot by each quarter so that you can see where we are with revenues and expenditures. And just real simple for revenue, the big number that you'll always see is our property tax money comes in at that point in time. So that's always the highest. And then when you look by the third quarter, and if you look down by the charts, you'll see that fund balance starts to drop because of course the majority of the revenue is coming in. The expenses stay constant, so we're pulling that fund balance down. So if ever you wonder why there's the importance of having adequate fund balance, that's why. We need enough money to pull us through the year as those expenses continue. So then the next slide will demonstrate a historical perspective for you. So we look at trends, and basically this is quite obvious that we are trending at the same rate year after year. You could look at the individual dollar amounts to see specifically where we are with revenues and expenditures. And then the next slide shows you cumulative amounts by each fund and where we stand with revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. The working cash fund, I will point out really quick, that is the one fund that we don't really have expenses going out. The only expense that can come out of a working cash fund is basically transfer. So it's somewhat of a savings account, and you can move money out of there into other funds. But you don't really pay any expenses out of the working cash fund. That's why you just see a green bar there. Then the next slide is a history of fund balances. And again, then the pictorial view, that top line demonstrates our operating funds, and we have spelled out for you what the operating funds are. It's your education fund, O&M, transportation, IMRF, and working cash. And so for those new board members, typically when we look at the budgets early on, we are more focused on the operating side of the funds. The other funds that we look at that are non-operating, which is your debt service, which basically are our bonds and our debts. So we levy enough money for that and you expend money out of that as well. Capital projects and life safety are basically spent on facility. Okay, and the timing of those projects at times don't necessarily line up to when that money comes in. So sometimes there's a great disparity on what that looks like. So for the most part, then you can see in the pictorial view, like I said, what the fund balances are from year to year and what's been happening there. And then the next slide, we'll take a look at the education fund. And then basically each and every slide thereafter demonstrates the same type of thing for each fund. But to your far left, you will see what is somewhat of a brief description of what that education fund is. That's in the long box to the left. Then you'll see, excuse me, all the detail for the revenue broken down by local, state, and federal. And then you will see the expenses, and on the bottom, underneath that second chart, you will see what contracted services represents, supplies, and tuition. So there's a brief narrative there. And then, of course, we can take a look at the chart. And then the next slide is our explanation of budget analysis. So when we look at the comparative data, we see where there might be a variance, and we'll explain it on this page. And then the next slide, we'll do the same thing for operating funds. So if you quickly go through that, there's a slide like that for each and every fund that we have. All great stuff, right?
Now, I'm gonna talk just real briefly about this year's budget for 14-15 as of March 31st, which we get our books closed. Here's just a reminder of where our budget was when we adopted it back in September of 14. On the operating side, you're looking at about a $3.1 million deficit. Also included here are the fund transfers, which were approved at the last meeting, so those are incorporated as well. Showing our audited balance as of July 1st of 14 and what our estimated funding, ending fund balance is going to be at the end of this year, what we're looking at, which is about 27.8% of expenditures. Our policy says we want to stay between 15 to 25%, so we're still within a good range there. The next slide is kind of a quick accounting, just kind of super simple of where we're looking at the adopted budget deficit, and a couple of kind of big dollar amounts that we know about that we either increase or decrease what that deficit's going to look like. We did have in the fall of last year where we had some health insurance cost adjustments where we came in a little better than we thought, so we adjusted the budget for that. A couple of new hires, and then the big one here is the reduction in state revenue due to the budget cuts at the state level, which we were told back in April, just not that long ago actually, that we would be losing $475,000 in state funding, which was primarily general state aid as well as some state categorical payments, transportation, some special ed, pretty much across the board a little bit everywhere. So that wasn't great news. Unfortunately, too, and I'll go to the next slide here. With that reduction, the governor also did have with that, they were redistributing some supplemental monies back to districts that were in financial need. Good news, bad news. Unfortunately, we didn't qualify because we weren't in financial need to do so, but we were one of a few districts that didn't get any money back, where a lot of districts did get some back. So it's kind of just a push of dollars from one area to another. And unfortunately, those cuts were 100% for us at $475,000. Good news a little on that too is as I'm going through the budget and I look at what the state has finally posted as to the money we are going to receive and comparing that to what we have actually budgeted. And it looks like we may be coming out break even there, meaning when I was budgeting early in the year, wondering what we were going to get from the state, I was a little low.
but not, even though with this cut, we might still be break even. But I don't wanna say yes until I know that the money's in the bank, to be quite honest with you, so, considering what just recently happened. So I think we'll be okay there. Also, I'll be looking at all the expenditure line items to make sure, it looks like we're tracking pretty close. I don't see anything that's kind of blowing up at this point, so I think we're probably gonna be looking at another pretty close to where we're probably gonna look. So that's this year's budget.
So the good and bad news about all of that again is, while the state did the proration for our general state aid, at the end of the day, and again, I think our experienced board members have lived through this, but for those of you who are new, later during the year, and this was very late again, April, we are then notified that, guess what, the 89% proration is not going to happen. In fact, we're going to take additional dollars away from you. And at that point in time, during the year, it's really too late to modify and adjust your spending and your budget at that point in time. But I think it gives us a flavor and indication of just what we're heading for a little bit in the future. So with that, I will tell you some more good news, unfortunately. As we start to look at our new budget, and again, this process started in January, and we continually look at this and foresee this as a fluid document. And as of Friday, a meeting that I had attended, it appears as if we may not have a state budget until perhaps the end of the summer or early part of the school year. So you will be asked to adopt the budget with really not finalized numbers perhaps from the state, because there is a lot of probably fist fighting going on the floor right now to who to harm more than another, not where to put more money, but who's gonna get hurt more than another district. So with that, we take a look at a few emerging events before I get started on here that we need to be cognizant of, that wasn't planned in all of this, is there is deep discussion about a property tax freeze, and that's one of Browner's pushes, meaning that whatever your tax levy was for a certain year, you would not be able to levy more than that, other than to capture new property. So good thing is we absolutely need new EAV because that would be the only way in which you would raise your tax levy. Bad news is, let's say that happened this year. So meaning our levy that we did for 2014 is going to garner us about $920,000 of new revenue. If that freeze were to say, and I'm not saying it's happening this year, but it's deep discussion and it has a lot of legs to happen, is that we would not be able to grab that $920,000. We would only be able to take a portion of what would be considered new property in there, and the rest stays with the taxpayer. So they really don't see a tax increase in that way. So that's discussion, and the discussion is that they are looking for 2 years of that. Now, again, a lot of districts, of course, would be opposing this because it would be detrimental on top of the general state aid proration that is happening, and not a very specific conversation as to what further could happen with that, with further prorations, or possibly reformation of the general state aid, and instead of how they would reduce that proration, they are actually proposing or examining to do it by a per pupil expense amount, which would harm us a little less, if that makes sense. We would still lose money, but not quite as much as if they did a regular proration. Then the third piece of information, and this is actually one of the attorneys had explained to us the trifecta, because you're hit 3 times. So, right, it's the proration of general state aid, it's the tax freeze potentially, and then the big pension crisis, as we all continually hear about, and know that that was found to be unconstitutional for them to make any changes to that. So here still lies this liability. How do we pay for it? school districts. Guess what? Locally, you may take on the burden. So there is a strong possibility, starting with our new school year, which is fiscal year 2016, that potentially part of that burden could be pushed off to us. So I will give you estimated amounts anywhere from starting with 0.5% of your TRS full credible earnings payroll. They take that, tack on 0.5%. There's a calculation, and that's how much we would be responsible for, to a full phase-in plan up to 8% of those payroll salaries. And over, I don't know how many years, but they've said we should calculate that and communicate that to the board, that that is a possibility moving forward. And a strong possibility that a portion of that would go on to the 2016 year. So then looking at this currently right now, under all the assumptions that we had looked at, and this was back in December and January, and again, we update this periodically, and this is with our PMA forecasting as we're building our budgets moving forward. We are looking at our total revenues of $77,608,484. Again, divided out through our local, state, and federal sources. The largest part of the local sources, again, are our property taxes. State sources, the largest portion of that is general state aid. And then our federal sources are a few different types of grants. So on the next page, just to acquaint you again with what you'll be looking at these next coming months as we get more detailed in our version of the budget. This is again just very high level and to get you acquainted with what you'll be seeing on a go-forward basis. This is how the revenue is split up with local dollars. And again, below there, we have identified what the majority of those local dollars are. And then we have the state sources, and then we have the federal sources. And then we take a look at that you have just a little bit of a historical perspective of what our revenue has been. We compare that to what the actuals have been, so you could see how we're budgeting from beginning to end and where those percentages come in, how close we are in that. And again, I credit Cindy for really modeling this out for us. And the area of which in 2011, where our revenue came in far higher than anticipated, was the year the stars aligned for us, and out came our construction grant money, and $21 million came to us from the state via federal stimulus money, if we follow a full circle around. So that was over a 2-year period that we've collected the revenue. And then you'll see for the next couple years what has happened. Typically, where we're off a little bit is from state and federal dollars through grants that they tell you, and we do this purposely. We go on the conservative side. If we end up with more money, great. That means they can spend more money with the grants. But if you overshoot that, you can't pull them back if they've already spent that. So on the revenue side, that gives you a little bit of a history. And then on the next slide is our expense budget, which is at $79,364,364. Again, every time you see this, it's broken down by objects: salaries and benefits, purchase service, supplies, materials, capitals, and other objects. And then again, the pie chart demonstrates to you how much each share of the object it takes up of the pie. And of course, because we are in the service business, it's always our salaries and benefits that take up the majority of those expenses. So when we take a look at really where reductions happen, that's why unfortunately that's the area that's examined after all the other areas are looked at first. And I do want to emphasize that. We always do take a look at where we could reduce that is further away from our students before we start doing the other areas. And then the next slide takes a look at our expenses, again, to budget to actual. and where we have been able to budget as close as possible, and in a budget of this size with the continuing moving targets, I'd say that's a pretty outstanding job, if I must say so myself. And then the next slide just kind of sums all of this up, where we're looking at a $1.7 million deficit on a go-forward basis with all the assumptions that we currently have built in there. And then the next slide just reminds everybody again, as we've allocated our dollars and really examined our curriculum technology initiative, what has been built into all these numbers. So the detail of that project you'll see on the bottom portion of this, and the rollout clearly demonstrates how many additional FTE we're looking at, the technology costs and support, professional development, and all the such. So right now, this is a very high level and where we stand. And then the next slide just gives you, again, an overall historical perspective of where we sit revenues and expenditures. The line across the bottom shows you where those fund balances are and can somewhat show you a trend of what has been happening. And then another reminder on the next slide is what has been happening with general state aid and the proration. So all of this started in fiscal year 2012. That's when they started with a 95% proration, where we lost nearly $500,000. The fiscal year 2013 is when we went to an 89 proration and lost almost another $1.4 million. And 2014 brought us to 88.7% proration. And then fiscal year 15, which we currently are in and will be ending, started at a 89.1% proration, and then with the additional loss, netted us to an 87.2 proration. So almost $5.6 million loss to our district over those past few years, just in general state aid. Every time they change that percentage by 1%, it's a $190,000 loss to us. And then lastly is when you look at all this money and people go, good God, what are you doing with all this 70-something million dollars worth of money, and how do we compare to other districts? This is what demonstrates to you our district compared to the state average. And not certain that when you really take the full state into place, that it's kudos to us that we're really right here where the state average is. I mean, there's probably good and bad to all of that. But I think one thing we really do want to highlight to you, and this is where the legislators get caught, this is where school districts are pinned against one another, is when you see the disparity on this bottom chart of from high to low, what school districts are spending. So I just want to read that to you. Elementary district, and this is throughout the state of Illinois, the lowest per pupil amount the school district is spending is $6,036 per pupil, while the highest is $30,628, nearly 5 times a difference depending on where your students actually attend school is what is spent per pupil. At a high school district, the lowest end is nearly $9,200, and at the highest end is $26,500. So between 2 to 3 times a different amount of what a district can spend per pupil, based on the property values basically, and your EAV. And then lastly, unit district, of which we are. The lowest amount that a district, unit district, which is a K-12 district, spends is nearly $7,200 per pupil, while the highest is $20,502. So great disparity there, and that's what the war on general state aid is basically at, is how do we split this money more equally so that this great disparity doesn't exist. And the hard part is telling districts who have the wealth that some of that money would be redistributed to probably the southern districts south of I-80, where there is great despair in those areas of how much they can and cannot spend per people, and how you just reallocate those resources. So that's the picture of all of this, and I hope it wasn't too much information, but we need to gradually get you into mode of budget because there will be a lot of information coming forth. And I'm not so certain though how much solid information we're going to have by June and July and August when we give this to you, because there is so much going on at the state right now. And trying to fix all of this, I don't know how quickly that will be communicated to us.
Thank you, Amy. Does anybody have any questions?
I noticed two things. Actually, there's a lot more I didn't notice, but back on page 7, expenditures, budget versus actual. I see that in the first 4 years, from 2007 to 2010, we're under budget, actual versus budget, 3 out of the 4 years. But in the last 4 years, 2011 to 2014, we're consistently over budget. Is there any reason or idea why that happens?
I think there's a myriad of things, and actually, if you want those details, we can send those to you, because at the end of each year, we actually go through what all those variances are. So every year when we display this, we actually give you a narrative of what makes up all those differences. I don't know generally off the top of.
A lot of, a big number is special ed tuition, to be honest with you. Sometimes that's a pretty big swing because you never know from year to year how many children are going to be outsourced in those services. And you do have to remember too, we do report those numbers to the state. There's a large database that the special ed department monitors that has all the children that are either outplaced or have IEPs and their costs associated with those. So there is some money that comes back the next year from the state to reimburse us for that, but we have to spend a certain amount first before we'll even get money from the state, and then the state has a calculation where they say they prorate that. I mean, nothing is 100% obviously, so then you'll see some of that revenue coming back in the next year, but typically that's a can be a fairly large swing depending on that, and then also some of the grants. You initially get allocations at the beginning of the year, and then they'll change those allocations. So they'll be either up or down. So then you'll see as the revenue will go up as well as the expenditures. You kind of have to look at those in conjunction with each other.
Things that have transportation. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, and then
Transportation.
Oh, yeah, when they, well, actually, it started, I think, 4 years ago or 5 years ago as they brought that down, and then again, consistently has not been funded at the same level.
so the just start line have the big ticket ones that. Yeah.
So there may be a correlation between the, I mean, it's a trend, obviously, over years, and there may be a correlation to external factors beyond our control with these various grants programs, state issues, and so on. I mean, the other correlation that I saw was the size of budgets physically changing, right? So you may have a little more slippage as you get larger and larger in budget. But I'm just trying to understand, what can we do to get back to those great numbers from, you know, where we're at 100% or just a little less from the first 4 years on that chart. Okay, so that, thank you. That was one of my questions, now, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Second question is on page 12, which is the per pupil amount. And I'm wondering, do we have, can we get, I'm sure it's easily found, an overlay of the graduation rate, showing the operating expenditure per pupil versus the graduation rate for that particular year?
Sure.
I mean, it's real simple, right? I mean, just look up the number, the percentage each year and plot it against these.
Right.
Because I'm curious, you know, as the expenses go up, are we getting better educationally or not? Or is this
Yeah,
some?
and I will say there are a lot of factors that go into that. That's why when you start examining, it's like peeling these layers of the onion back, you know. as the demographics have changed. You know, I mean, when you start to take a look at the level of poverty and second language and all the other things, good, bad, or indifferent, how anybody, it's not to judge, it's just to say those are factors that have to be built into all of that as well. It's not as simple as just, well, you spend more money. And that's the struggle the state is having. And the factor, and I think we've talked about this at FFAC, that they're really trying to take a serious look at, and this is where it becomes a great deal of heartburn for other districts, is we know when you're dealing with districts with certain levels of poverty, and we are over a threshold of 50%. That is a bit of a game changer. That's the majority of your population, our students are coming from financially struggling homes. It takes a different level of service to educate our students. That is just a matter of fact that the state has taken a look at, studied, researched, and they are trying to build a formula that weights these different variables to a different level to say, when you're dealing with students with second languages and in poverty, you should get a different amount of money because you have to provide additional services to these students. It's just matter of fact of how it works. And when they did that and demonstrated that and walked through it without growing the pot of money, taking the same pot of money for general state aid and redistributing that, there are a lot of districts that would lose a great deal of their general state aid money, and there are districts that would gain a lot. Well, that caused so much heartburn, it you know, kind of just put all that aside. And now they're saying, we need to just look at the formula first and say, how much is adequate funding for our students? And that may be that pot has to grow. But we are still weighting these other variables and going to consider that in the formula when we redistribute that money. Now, when that will be finalized and come out, who knows, they've really been looking at this for 15, 20 years. This formula is so old, it's not garnering the results that it once did probably early on because of so many changes in our population. So those are just the fact of the matters, and it's hard to take one number and attach it to that and say, well, as we're spending more money, we should be seeing better results. Well, no, how about the demographic population has shifted? I could tell you from 10 years ago when I stepped into where we are now, that would be a great variable to have to consider. So while we can do that, I don't know that the final foregone conclusion would be that interrelated with.
But when you put the percentage grad rate up there, it invites the investigation that you're
Yes.
talking about.
Yes,
If there's difference, and if it doesn't track, then
certainly,
you want to look deeper.
right.
I just wanted to compliment Terry. State of Texas, that's much more progressive. They actually identified 19 risk factors they call it. And what they do is you've got obviously there's combinations of risk factors. So a student from a middle class family, English is their primary language, and two-parent household, they may have $1. Then okay, you've got students that is English is not their first language. That may cost an additional 75 cents per dollar. But they actually calculate up to 19 risk factors. Second thing I want to make you aware of, in 2012, the state changed the way we calculated graduation rates. So there's a big thud for everybody, almost without exception across the state. So in terms of trying to track that, you may not see that's going to compound, be a compounding variable. We're trying to determine correlation coefficients.
All right, any other questions? Well, thank you. Okay, approval of quote for lease of one-to-one devices. Andrea.
Well, she's making me do it.
Okay, Cindy. I was gonna say, she sat down pretty quick.
I know. At the last board meeting, we had an informational item we had put out there that we were going to be looking at getting quotes from leasing companies and banks for financing the one-to-one devices for students and for staff.
We did get 4 companies that gave us quotes, National Bank of Trust, Resource Bank, American Capital, which is a leasing company, and Providence Capital Network, which is also a leasing company. And after analyzing the numbers, the one that is the least expensive and the one we will be recommending is American Capital for a 3-year term. It would be an annual payment of $407,137.12 a year. The total cost of interest, with interest and a small fee, is $17,012.36. So the total cost of all the, they're the Acer Chromebooks, there's 3,100 that they'd be purchasing. It was $1,205,900 just for the cost of the devices. And with the cost of the lease, the grand total is $1,222,912.36, which is a net cost of $394.49 a device. The base cost of the device with the cases and they're getting them etched and the software licensing, I think some extra chargers, it was $389. So actually, honestly, that's not a bad price for a 3-year lease. And it just does help kind of take those costs, that entire cost, and amortize it over 3 years, so we're not taking a big hit all at once. So that's the recommendation.
Incredible interest rate.
Yeah, that was, it's basically 2.84% interest rate, which, I mean, you really can't beat that. And then also this company does, if we want help to, later at the end of the lease or later on to try and resell those devices, depending on the value, we don't know. I mean, I think the plan is to, we'll lease them for the 3 years, but we want to keep them for 4 years at minimum, depending on the usage and what kind of wear and tear they have. The longer the better, but we'll just see how that, especially this first group of them, we'll get a better feel for how long these things last and what sort of resale value they may or may not have at the back end. So. And also that comes with a warranty as well. I think it's a 3-year warranty. So it's a good deal. And I think you guys all have it. So yeah, you have it.
Any questions for Cindy?
The supplier listed is CPW. Is that correct? And I haven't seen any other supplier. I've seen other financial companies. Was there only one bid that was submitted? Is that what I'm actually seeing here?
Well, that's technology. I don't know, Brian, if you could speak.
Yeah, we actually had a rather large committee that went through about 20 different devices and got it down to that one device. And we had 2 vendors that are Acer resellers quoted out. One was CWG, the other one Insight.
Yeah.
I think is what it was. The CWG was
well,
considerably cheaper or less expensive than Insight was.
Their total was like 1.4 million.
Right.
I have seen in relationship to the Los Angeles lawsuit where they got away from one-to-one, were very upset with the program, that they had managed to get their units at a $222 per unit price as compared to the $277 that we're spending on ours. They did that, I believe, by going directly to Google as a supplier. Did we try to do that or not?
You cannot buy these directly from Google. You have to go through a supplier such as CWG or Insight. They're Acer resellers, and that's who you can buy them from. Apple, we could buy direct from Apple. We could buy direct from Dell or multiple vendors that sell Dell. This was just a device that we settled on, and that's their channel.
I have a question, is how are we gonna pay for this? I mean, me personally, just getting down here, I don't have enough information where I feel comfortable to vote on. I'm not gonna vote on it. I mean, how are we gonna pay for it? What do we do? If it breaks down, it's a warranty. What if it gets lost? Up slept on the bus, it gets beat up, gets stolen? I mean, there's probably a few questions still I'd like to ask about it.
You want to address that?
And actually, the technology committee went through all of that and presented previously, but
Yeah.
Brian could remind.
Well, I was just saying, we also talked to our principals who've been piloting in 8th grade. How many devices have been stolen, lost in 2 middle schools?
There've been none from Plymouth. You guys have?
No.
Zero. There's been breakage. There hasn't been any lost or stolen. Zero. There's been broken screens and keyboards and some other things, but no complete loss.
How are we gonna keep track of all these? I mean, you're talking about a lot of cabinets here.
Okay. All these devices are within the Google Management Council. And so should one get stolen, there are certain things we can do to lock the device down so that nobody else can use it, in hopes that we force them to return it to us. There are also some systems within there where we can geotag them and find where they're at and turn that information over as necessary. We have within the one-to-one handbook or documentation that's on our one-to-one website, we have things in there for parents and students that, don't come to us and tell us your device was stolen. File the police report, and that's how we work out when we issue one out, and we go about working with the police to track them down. Luckily, we haven't had to have that happen yet. The warranty that we have for our current Dells essentially covers everything other than loss. And same thing with the warranty from Acer. The nice thing about the warranty from Acer is it also includes replacing the battery each year during those 3 years as part of the warranty. And we talk about loss or theft or things like that. How many books have gone missing or lost in the district over the years? It's gonna happen. With technology the way it is, we have the ability to track some of that down and give ourselves a shot at recovering it. And I think so far, all the ones that we've had come up missing have all been left in somebody's locker or in somebody, a student has left the district. It was either left in their locker, or I think we had one case where it was shipped back by the parent. Because again, they're signing off on the documentation on what they owe, should that not get turned back into the district.
And Brian, you want to
Yes.
get about the insurance?
We are also looking at providing parents the opportunity. The business office needs to go through it with a fine tooth comb and make sure everything's, will work out. But at no cost to the district, parents, first off, they can put some things on their own renters or homeowners insurance as a rider to cover the device if they're concerned. But they also have the ability, I think it was $31 through a third party, so none of the funds come through the district at all. They can buy, I think it's Worth Insurance Group or something like that, that specializes in one-to-one environments. So for $31 a year, they can buy additional coverage. But what we've seen when we talk with a lot of other districts, more times than not, those that can put it under their own existing homeowners insurance sort of thing to avoid the costs if they're concerned. So there are some things that, I get it. And unfortunately, we didn't give the board members the all-in-one, the always-on case that adds to the protection of the devices. And I don't think anybody has them here. So the protective case that we put on them, it never comes off. It's designed to be on. It zips closed. And we had some things like they're talking about the screen breakage. We had one school where the breakage was because kids were leaving something on the keyboard and closing the lid and zipping it up and going home. The other school, they were sliding a piece of paper underneath the laptop, and so it gets sucked up in the fan and cause overheating issues. The instructional coach did some small videos, and it was shared out via PBIS, and both those issues essentially stopped. And so now the principals, just like they do now with other devices, or I say devices, books, things like that, they have the option of looking, okay, was this done via, on purpose, damage? Was it just, accidental and things like that? And so there are some minor charges that are built into the documentation the parents sign that, we know this kid threw this on the ground on purpose, or things like that, so they get little charges like that the district may not collect right away, but it goes onto their account and follows them around the district.
And so all of our buildings are all set up with the wireless access and all the servers are all updated to carry all this?
This is nothing to do with servers.
Okay.
We have access points that are coming in that is being paid for by E-rate funds. And so we're waiting for the May 21st approval letter from the federal government. We've been told unofficially that we are, essentially everybody that applied for the E-rate that we applied for is getting their funds. We're waiting for that final approval and we'll be going out and getting those in place or ordered. And then our crews throughout the summer will be installing them. Right now, the wireless we have throughout the district is coverage based, but this will be dropping an AP in every classroom specifically to support the one-to-one.
And we'll be hiring any other, say, techs?
It's already built in.
Yeah, in the budget or in some of the stuff we looked at earlier, there's 2 technicians that are being added. And I want to say 6 instructional coaches that are being added. And those are curriculum, those are teachers, helping other teachers through the process.
But all the expenses are already in the budget, built into the budget. Is that?
Absolutely, yes.
I guess my biggest concern is just how we're going to do it, just worried about digging a bigger hole, to crawl out of, because I'm afraid of if we go ahead and approve this at 1.7 million, what other area is going to suffer next year when you have to try to budget? Somebody's going to suffer. The money's got to come from someplace.
Right. We passed the one-to-one initiative, so this is part of that initiative that we passed, that they were gonna come back to us with, when they made the proposal to us, they hadn't selected their device. And so upon doing further research, they selected the device, and now they're coming to us with that. But this package was passed in March.
So what are you saying? That we can't fall back on it if we decide to? I mean, what if we don't agree with this and we don't want it? I guess that's my question.
I haven't considered it.
The biggest, I was there, I listened, I was invited to meet, I thought it wasn't going to pass, and then it did pass. And the biggest concern I have relates to the bottom line that you said, Fred, about how do we pay for this, and the thing that I'm most concerned about at the moment is the $475,000 that apparently we've lost from the state. Cindy, you presented something tonight that says that maybe our budget would compensate to some degree for that, right? But I'm still concerned. We have almost $500,000 left, we think, than what we expected to have. When the old board made that, passed that one-to-one initiative, it was before we had lost that almost $500,000. And in either event, we're still going to be running deficit, and I'm still worried about going forward. The only reason that we can even think about this, in my mind, is because we had that $21 million construction grant, $10 million of which was set aside into the general fund or the fund balance.
Yes.
Right? That won't last forever, folks.
No.
And if you look at the lines that Andrew has just presented to us, those graphs, it goes away. And it's a real concern. So I feel the same way I did on that evening, and even before that at the FFAC meeting over at Founders, when we talked about the one-to-one initiative. It's a fantastic concept. It has potential to save money and improve education for the district, but we still have to pay for it. I think Fred has a good point. We have to know how we're going to pay for it. And the state just said, well, however you do it, you're going to lose $500,000 just rounded. Figure it out, guys. So I think it's an issue. It's a valid issue to address.
And so as we build the budget, we go forward, and every year we're up against, so the frustration and the uncertainty is over there, no matter what initiative you choose or not choose to do, right? Because the state is always taking twists and turns on us, and we have to react to that. But the opportunity then is, as we're building the budget for those next few years, is to prioritize what our needs are. And we did have deep discussion at FFAC meetings, at a couple of board meetings, that if this is, and we all agreed it was, this is the initiative that we want to move forward with, and this is the top priority. So does there mean they're going to be squeezing out elsewhere? Yes, absolutely. But we have talked about, we have spent a great deal amount of money on our facilities, making those a priority, right? We built a new high school, we renovated existing buildings, we built a new elementary building. We have taken probably 6 to 8 years of doing sincere investing in our facilities area. And now we are saying that things are changing in education. And to make that connection with the student, we have to change our philosophy and the deliverance of education. And that's something I think the curriculum department has done a great deal of work with technology. All of us district-wide have gone out, looked at this in place, understand the shift that is happening with different testing and different delivering of education, like we said. It's not the same old, same old. We're not taking a system of which exists and pushing it into this device and saying, okay, this is the way it's going to happen. The whole dynamics of a classroom is changing. And that's what all the professional development is geared toward.
I just want to comment on one of the things we looked at is Roger Christensen is probably further along with one-to-one in his classroom than anybody else. I asked him right at the beginning of the month how many pieces of paper, how many copies. He said about 120 sheets of paper. Do you know how many copies were made in this district as of the end of April? 12,487,500.
I believe.
That comes out to a little over 4 reams of paper per child.
Yep.
We've got 50-some staff members who made over 50,000 copies.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the things we're looking at, Fred. We're not, that's over 40 pallets of paper.
Personally, I don't think you're gonna save anything in paper, that's my opinion, we'll see. But, I know there's been studies done, and some schools have not saved any. But I'm just a little bit concerned about it financially, and also, I mean, I don't have no data in front of me to show, what's the difference between this and the great improvement in Hammond, I mean, you're talking, if you get into the elementary level, you're dealing with young kids that, do they know how to operate all these things all the time? How much time are you gonna be spending here working on one thing versus another?
They're actually probably the larger users of all of this. And we did visit, and they visited a lot more schools and districts to see all of this in place. But at the end of the day, really, I mean, here's what it's going to come to. Every year as we go through building a budget, we have to develop what those priorities are, and then that's where we place the money. The problem is, no matter what we do, there's not enough money to place toward everything. And that has been a continuum, and when you originally were on the board, that happened. And we always have to squeeze one end to make something else happen at the other. So that is where we will be sitting again. We will spend time at board meetings saying what are our priorities, and those are the first things we're going to fund. And then whether or not some of the other things happen and what the appetite is of how much money we're going to overspend by is what the outcome will be. Additionally, looking and really examining what are other potential revenue sources that we really need to start having a deep discussion of, knowing where the state is sitting with their funding and basically leaving us to say, hey, there's only so many opportunities for you to capture additional revenues, and we've discussed some of that at FFAC. And when are we going to get serious about those discussions of really examining what those other sources potentially could be? So we did not put this on the table to say, let's throw it up in the air and see where it falls, and hopefully we'll be able to fund this. It is with deliberate, I think, information and resources, and knowing that the future may be tough for other decisions to happen, but knowingly all of that information, I think we truly believe wholeheartedly that this is an area of which we feel we need to take that additional risk of investing our money to put in the classroom and with our students to see if we could optimize on seeing a better end product at the end of the day for all of our students.
In fact, this initiative, this one-to-one was not like an overnight, let's jump into this.
Oh, no, I
I mean,
believe
you
that.
know, they spent 2.5, 3
Yeah.
years visiting sites
Yeah.
and researching
And I understand that.
you know, and I understand you know, it's hard to get your hands around this because it was such a big, it's a huge initiative.
That's a lot of money.
And a lot of money, but in the same, I mean, I think you have to trust the administration team and the prior board that this decision wasn't made half-heartedly. This
You know,
was a very tough decision.
With all due
to
respect,
make.
I
And so
totally
just, you know,
understand. But I also know what it's like to sit. When you got a bulletin board up there and there's 40 teachers up there, you want to lose a job. You know, that don't make me feel good either.
No.
So that's just my concern down the road. You know, these computers ain't gonna do no good if there ain't nobody to show kids how to use them.
Right.
You know, so I think it's a great idea. I really do. But it's a matter of being able to pay for it.
Absolutely.
My big concern.
Did you have a question?
So I got anything on that.
Terry?
Well, Howard was first.
To address some of your concerns, been to a conference very recently and was there in the presence of somebody from Wyden Township, where they're about 5 years ahead of where we are.
Yeah, we visited Wyden.
In terms of the implementation. Their truancy cost to district, their truancy rate is near zero. There are other features that are like that ultimately, the fact that the students are more engaged in their learning leads to the prospect that this can be far less expensive because these things actually do ameliorate things that have been cost centers and virtually remove them when they're used well. And it's up to us to make sure that they get used well. So I wholeheartedly support the project. I wish that I had seen the full list of vendors to make sure that we're getting the type of product that we're supposed to be getting and doing the investigation of getting the best price. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question. When I looked at the backup material, it's 3,100 computers, right? I think that's what's on the PO or the request.
Yes.
So if it's a 3-year rollout, why 3,100 in the first year? We have 6,400 kids. I don't understand. I just don't know.
Sure.
What the plan is.
It's based on the school year or the grades. So 3 through 9, we'll have them next year. So as part of the whole overall plan, I think it's 3 through 9, and then is it 3 through 10 or 2 through 10? And then, well, that's right, we're doing the high school all in one shot. So then next year it would be 2 through 12.
So it's just front loaded. I mean, it just so
It's front loaded.
happens.
Right.
Yes, we're
Right.
running more of the first year than we do the second, third.
Okay.
Oh, did you have one more question?
If this is 3 through 9, and all of the 8th graders have been equipped with these things over the past year, has that been taken into account?
Yes.
Because those have to move along too. So we don't
Right.
have 6th graders, we only have 5 of them.
Right.
Yeah. So that-
They're moving with them to the high school.
So because it's front loaded and what you just said, Howard, we should have less to buy each year as we progress into this.
Yeah, if you look at the 3-year plan we laid out, it was, I can't remember, second and third year, but it's considerably less.
So as you said, Andrew, we create, or we ought to take some risk in order to, provide this delivery method and hope, as Howard said, to get some gains, some payback from it. And as it's structured, as we move forward, the risk theoretically becomes less. All other things become equal. Yeah, which we don't know for sure.
As Howard mentioned, it's not only truancy, there's decreases in disciplinary referrals. There's a lot of qualitative variables that are impacted by it. Graduation rate increased. So.
Yeah, and I recall a comment from one of the other board members from the discussions previous that if things get really bad, we can pull the plug, so to speak.
Any other questions, or we ready for? Okay, I forgot to read this part at the beginning, so that the Board of Education accept American Capitalist Code for a 3-year, $1 buyout lease purchase at an annual percentage rate, interest rate of 1.284% with total interest and fees of $17,012.36 for the lease purchase of 3,100 Xer Chromebooks for $1,205,900. The grand total is $1,222,912.36. Net cost per device is $3.94. 300. I was at 49 cents. Second.
Vicky? Who seconded, I think.
I did.
Ready?
Yep.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
No.
Vicky Aaron in favor,
Yes.
Mary Hess,
Yes.
Carrie Malat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Business consent agenda. Approval of accounts payable, business consent agenda, that the Board of Education approve business consent agenda items A through C. Can I have a motion? So moved. Second. Any discussion? Roll call, Vicky?
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Vicky Aaron in favor,
Yes.
Mary Hess,
Yes.
Carrie Malat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Next we have the Vision 2020, Dr. Moeller.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate Nikki Hayes for putting me right above the word adjournment. So first thing I'd like to say about the Vision 2020 is there's absolutely no cost associated with this. Basically, this is a statewide initiative, and what they're requesting is for boards of education to basically pass a resolution saying they support these 4 basic tenets of education. And I don't know if any of you went through the whole Vision 2020 executive summary, but there's a lot of key issues here that have been impacting us, and not the least of which is for the highly effective educators. One of our biggest problems has been recruiting more diverse, not only administrative, but also teaching workforce, because the state of Illinois currently does not offer, they no longer provide provisional certification, so people who have licensure out of state cannot come to the state of Illinois and work under provisional certification until they clear up what are called deficiencies. In fact, we had a phenomenal candidate from Michigan, Tish Dawkins wanted to hire, and it would have taken her 2.5 years to find her licensure. So to me, that's a huge thing, because we want to cast as wide a net as possible. And a colleague of mine from the University of Illinois is the dean, or she previously was the University of Illinois. She's the dean at the College of Education at Wayne State University, Detroit. And 80% of their education majors are minority. And I had a great pipeline, but when the state of Illinois did not offer reciprocity anymore, and they also did away with the provisional certifications, that basically the ROE said, don't bother even interviewing people from out of state, because by the time they get their licensure, without, like I said, without the provisional certification. So there's a lot of positive things. There's no money associated with this. And right now, I think there's about 530 school districts that have basically just passed a resolution saying they support these ideas. Again, there's no money associated with it. It's just that, it's a statement made by the board that that we value highly, these 4 tenets, highly effective educators, 21st century learning, shared accountability, and the equitable and adequate funding. You'll also notice there was in the years 1995 to 2005, there were a total of, I think, 7 or 8 unfunded mandates by the state of Illinois. From 2005 to 2015, there's been over 130. And one of the other items that's listed under here is, under the shared accountability, is to allow districts to opt out of mandates and regulations. There's already quite a bit of talk about that, and several of us here and from other government agencies in the county met with the lieutenant governor at the regional office of education to talk about just that. So there's a lot of positives associated with this. And again, it's not, we're not committing ourselves to any type of funding or buying into any program. It's just basically that we agree with these principles of education. So
Is this gonna come back at the next meeting?
I would, that's what I was gonna ask you to come back. And again, it's basically passing a resolution saying that, yes, we agree with the tenets of this.
Is there any crossover, I don't know if the right word would be, to Common Core, Park, and all that sort of alignment with curriculum and so on in this group, or do they not address that?
That's not specifically addressed anywhere. There's talking about offering schools more latitude, but not without. If you remember, Chris Cook came out, and it's on the website, he basically said with the park assessment, you either take the park assessment or you're gonna get your funding cut. And they have not backed off on that at all.
But this group is not taking up that fight.
They're not in back off. Okay.
So do we have a consent agreement? All right. All right. And with that, Doug. Do I have a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.